never say it, and I should say it enough. I should say it more. We turn out a newsletter every month, and this month we're also doing an end of the year letter, which we've never done before, which is fun to just review the whole year. But because we've never done it before, Ellen and I are probably on like our 50th draft, passing it back and forth. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I just want to just acknowledge Ellen and how patient she is in this process. It's kind of an amazing thing that it just happens, and Shelley too with the website. So that's coming. We're meeting today. Obviously, we're here. We're meeting Thursday. Where the focus is true peace work, which somebody recommended to me fairly recently. I didn't know about it. And it's a really lovely book, Essential Writings on Engaged Buddhism. I on Tuesday talked some from Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings. On Thursday, Erica talked from Zenju Earthling Manuel's teachings primarily. Debbie's going to talk from Joan Halifax's teachings tonight, I think. And on Thursday, Marianne is going to be teaching about embodied Buddhism, and then we're going to do a solstice celebration. So jam-packed. And then we're going to take a break, and then some of us are going down to Tassajara to do the Wildland Firefighter Retreat. There's actually a fair number of us going down this year to support the firefighters. Luke is one of the people who was there a couple of years ago, and Sue Husari. Part of the Sangha was a wildland firefighter. We'll be back the week of January 6th, and we're going to be focusing on the question, what is Zen? So would you please figure it out before then, so you can all come and we can enlighten each other about what this thing is that we're doing or not doing. And I think the last announcement is the monthly vigil on the courthouse square in Santa Rosa, in solidarity. I said, what are we in solidarity with? We're in solidarity with life. We're in solidarity with awakening. We're in solidarity with may all beings be safe and free and happy. And so it's from 5 to 6. I'll be there. I think others in the Sangha, and certainly others, it's interfaith. And if you can be there from 5 to 6, it's rain or shine.
And there's some flyers up there.
Which day?
Oh, good. Wonderful.
Is that tomorrow?
It's tomorrow.
Yes.
Tomorrow. So there's flyers there, and it's also on the website. But if you could just, like if you live in communal housing or something, just put it out there. Or just put it somewhere. So if we really want, it's important to bring a candle in the dark. Okay, so I think that's it. So go, Debbie. Thank you.
My apologies for being late. I have a Dharma sister who has myasthenia gravis, and so her mobility fluctuates a lot. And so she needed to go into the city to see her neurologist at 10 this morning. And I thought, sure, I can get here by 5. It's like, yeah. So it got a little challenging. The doctor was late, and there were tests, and at any rate, but here we are. I was very drawn to this particular essay by Joan Halifax called Hope at the Edge. It was written in 2019, but it feels like it could have been written yesterday. And for those of you who don't know much about Joan Halifax, she is the Roshi and founder of Upaya Zen Center in New Mexico. She's an anthropologist, an ecologist, and over the years she's been very active in many, many things: civil rights, being with the dying, visiting people, incarcerated people. And she talks about how people would always ask her, how can you do that work? Isn't it depressing? Isn't it hopeless? really resonated with me. I worked for years as a home health physical therapist, and most of my patients were at least 60. Many of them were much, much older than that. And what happens in that work is that you form a relationship with people because you don't generally just see them one time. You know, you see them, somebody falls and breaks a hip and you see them, and then maybe the next year they get pneumonia. And so you see them multiple times, you know, over the course of their lives. And I think I haven't done hospice work, but I imagine it must be really, really similar because you're accompanying them on this journey. Excuse me, I've been just really tender lately. And you accompany them on this journey as they lose things. Thanks, I'll eat the whole box. But I never found it depressing. I found it challenging. I felt very lucky to be part of something that, a way to help people stay at home, a way to help people do things they wanted to do that they perhaps couldn't do in the way they used to. So I understand what it feels like to be asked, like, how can you do that? You know, how can you do that kind of work? Isn't it a bummer? So, you know, on a good day, I felt like I should be paying them. So, and so, you know, in being asked these questions, you know, she thought, well, you know, is this work hopeless? And what's hope? Society has an idea about what hope is, you know, and it's based in desire, and it's based in wanting things to come out a certain way that we think is the right way. But frequently things don't turn out the way we hope they will. And when you are holding on to an idea of how you think things should turn out, what would be the best thing to happen, then when that doesn't happen, people can see that as some sort of misfortune. And so ordinary hope really is a form of suffering. You know, you create this scenario where, you know, you think things should turn out a certain way and they don't. And the idea of optimism and pessimism, it's interesting. I had never thought about it this way before, but she talks about how both the optimist and the pessimist kind of have an out, because they have an out in terms of not feeling compelled to be engaged to make change. Because the optimist thinks, well, you know, everything's going to be okay. I don't really need to do anything. It'll all turn out all right. And the pessimist thinks that things are just, you know, everything's going to hell in a handbasket, so what's the use? And so both of those kind of polar opposite ideas kind of incapacitate people, and they don't become engaged. And I think the hard thing too with being an optimist is that if things don't come out well, it can really lead to a lot of cynicism, which is really incapacitating if you want to try to help people. Barbara Kingslipper explained this whole situation with optimism and pessimism and hope, wise hope, which is what I'll be talking about. And she tells this story where, you know, it's winter, and the pessimist says, you know, it's going to be a really bad winter. We're probably all going to die. And the optimist says, well, you know, I don't think it's going to be that bad. We'll probably be okay. But the person living in wise hope says, maybe somebody will still be alive in February, so I'm going to go ahead and put some potatoes in the root cellar just in case. And so wise hope is it's a mode of resistance. It's a gift that you can cultivate. And if we look at hope through the lens of Buddhism, wise hope is really born of our vows, of how we live in vow, of radical uncertainty, knowing that we don't know. We don't know how things are going to turn out. Wise hope sees things the way that they are, including the truth of impermanence, as well as the truth of suffering. And I think it reflects our understanding that what we do matters. Even though how and when it may matter, who and what it may impact aren't things that we get to know, and we may never know. Roshi Holopax was very influenced by Rebecca Solnit's book, which is moving up to the top of my reading list, called Hope in the Dark. And that was where she started to develop this idea of wise hope. And so what wise hope isn't is the belief that everything's going to turn out okay. She said that we can't know what will unfold from our actions now or in the future, but we can trust that things will change. Our vows, our actions, how we live, what we care about, what we care for, and how we care really matters. And so wise hope essentially is living by vow. It reflects our ability to be guided by our deepest values, to be conscientious, and to connect with who we really are. It's being a Buddha now. And our vows support us in recognizing impermanence, interdependence, unselfishness, compassion, and wisdom. And wise hope strengthens our vows. If we try to function in the world as Buddhists without wise hope, we might be afraid to take a stand and choose to ignore or back away from situations of harm or danger. We might be in denial or willfully ignorant over suffering experienced by others when transgressive situations arrive. People being kidnapped on the street by men in masks. I was talking to somebody today about an immigrant family who's the breadwinner in the family got deported back to Honduras, and there are 8 of them living in a 2-bedroom apartment that they're paying $2,700 a month for. I'm just like, it's insane. They're afraid to go to the grocery store. The kids are afraid to go to school. There was something, I watched a Zoom presentation about how immigrant families can prepare if a loved one is deported, and it's incredibly complicated. What do you do if your kids are at school and ICE comes for you? And so there's like this whole network of ways to get guardianship and to set things up so that if that happens, your kids will be okay. I think that's really sad. So if we can avoid being morally apathetic, paralyzed by hopelessness, or living in the bubble of privilege, which is very present, I think, especially for us. You know, we're away from a major city, so we don't see a lot of things that are going on. But if we can avoid being trapped by these defenses that cause us to not engage, we can step forward and meet harm with determination to end suffering, even if it appears that our actions are futile. And some people will tell you, you know, you're doing all of this, it's not going to do any good. And I always remember, you know, the thing about hope that's tricky is that, you know, Suzuki Roshi said that we do things with no gaining idea. So we don't know how our actions or even just how we are in the world will affect people. And so through this idea of wise hope, Joan Halifax has developed this idea of edge states. And I'm going to tell you about them, but I need to tell you there's like a whole book. So this is like going to be the Reader's Digest version. I'm halfway through this book. I highly recommend it. And so she describes these states, she calls them 5 internal and interpersonal qualities that are keys to compassion, to a compassionate and courageous life. A life that's grounded in wise hope, in which we, and without which we can't serve and we can't survive. And when these resources deteriorate, it can be harmful and we can be ineffective. She describes them as bivalent states, and so I was like remembering when my brother tried to teach me to serve. You know, it's like it's all about the balance, which I did not have. And so these edge states, you know, kind of how I'm understanding this is that there's states of mind that you need to remain balanced. And if you lose your balance, you can sort of tip over into this edge where something that is a helpful thing becomes toxic and not helpful. So she describes 5 of these states: altruism, empathy, integrity, respect, and engagement. And she describes them as assets of a mind and a heart that exemplify caring, connection, virtue, strength, and wise hope. So the first one, altruism, we all know is selfless behavior that benefits others without expecting anything in return, any personal reward or any expectation of a particular outcome. And it's really critical that altruism not be grounded in conventional hope, because if it is, then we become attached to the outcome. It's actually, in psychological circles, is referred to as pathological altruism when we lose sight of the point, which is to be helpful, and when we seek recognition or we become attached to outcomes. The next state is empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. And this can be really, really tricky. Because if we take on too much of the suffering of others and identify too much, we can become overwhelmed and we can be ineffective. We have to remember that impermanence will prevail, and that we can never really know the experience of another. I don't care how identical, you know, your situation is to somebody else's, you really don't ever know exactly how they feel. But you can witness how they feel, and you can listen to them, and you can try to be helpful. Integrity is the next state. And that is just having strong moral principles. You know, when we see things that we just are just so morally wrong, like people being kidnapped from the street and, you know, children's parents getting deported, or people going to a Hanukkah celebration with a rifle, it violates our sense of integrity and justice. And we experience moral suffering. And we have to be careful. You know, it can generate outrage, apathy, distress, and there's nothing wrong with feeling all of those things, but you can't stay there. You need to, what I try to do is feel what I'm feeling, but remember the basic goodness of people. And that's really challenging sometimes. Respect is also one of the edge states. Respect, a sense of courtesy and consideration for the feelings, rights, and property of others. This one can get really tricky, especially in terms, and this is especially relevant for me, is, you know, we frequently disparage ourselves. You know, I've heard many people say, being involved in this work with immigrants, that, you know, oh, I'm a privileged white person. And it sounds like they feel bad about who they are. You know, disrespect, disparagement, it's rooted in cynicism and futility. You know, I guess somebody could describe me as a privileged person. I don't have to worry about where I'm going to sleep tonight or if I'm going to eat tomorrow. I haven't had to go to the change jar for toothpaste money since college. But I also know that in many ways, it's just luck. It's just luck. I could just as well be homeless. And that being respectful of where people are, it's tricky. It's this business of feeling privileged. The problem with that is it makes it creates like an other thing, like I'm privileged, you're not privileged. Well, polarization like that just for me isn't really helpful. And so I think wise hope enables us to see that we all have basic goodness and to see the suffering of others, but to hold it all in equal ground and to not attach judgment and meaning to other people's misfortune. The last edge state is engagement, which is participating and being involved in the work that we do. It gives us a sense of purpose and meaning. It feels good to help people. It feels good to be nice. But we need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of our families. We need to feed the dogs. We need to get enough rest. And if we don't, we can get burned out. And that can just lead to our being not effective and being burned out. And so Roshi Halifax feels that wise hope is what prevents us from being burned out, and that it fuels and inspires our ability to be engaged in a healthy way. So I just wanted to close with a quote it's actually from the Edge States book. We all know indifference kills. In service to peace, in service to nonviolence, in service to life, we live by vow. We have the courage to stand at the edge, and we live in the embrace of wise hope. My therapist would be so glad to know I'm weeping in public.
Wise hope!
The only thing that makes her happier is when I come in and say, I had a dream. So, I hadn't really thought of a particular topic. If you want to talk about, if this idea of wise hope is something you haven't heard before or something you've experienced, or just, what is it like to be a Buddhist in this world and to still have wise hope? So, I assigned you the timekeeping delegation portion of our show.
Can I throw, the question of what is it like to be Buddhist in this world and to have wise hope is, I always think basic goodness. That's a fundamentally Buddhist thing, which is really different than what the traditions many of us were brought up in, which is more sin based. And so like wise hope and basic goodness, like what is that? And everything Debbie just said. And then if you want to weep, we can do that too.
Feel free to weep openly. There's more than that.
Okay. So any of this. So let's so you're going to do it, Jared, and then we'll bring people back about